Welcome back to your number one breakfast show on the 1st of November. Big discussions we're having. We're counting down to the general elections. Every single passing day, our minds, our hats go to the 25th of February next year, where the presidential and the National Assembly elections will happen, and then the 11th. We have joined the conversation from Abuja, Dayo Israel, who is the national youth leader of the All Progressives Congress. Great to have you join us on News Hub.
Thank you so much, and good morning, my brother. How are you doing?
I'm brilliant. I'm sure you're equally great too.
Thank you.
All right. On our Road 2023 series this morning, we're looking at the APC, which is your party, and its manifesto as it directly affects the youth. And it's something that, if you look at the country's demographics, is widely represented by young people. Median age of 18, more than 60% of the country's population between the ages of 25 downwards. And the numbers keep going higher when you look at how the young people are impacted. But that's on the good side. We also have the young people massively represented in the poverty numbers, as well as with the people who are not employed or underemployed. So I'm sure if you walked on the streets of Abuja, Lagos, or any of the major capitals, Dayo, in this country, the number one problem facing young people will have to be the economy and majorly employment opportunities. So let's start from there.
Thank you very much. I want to extend my gratitude for the platform to be here with you guys this morning. And I think that it's important that I begin by giving a reference, not trying to give an excuse, but giving a reference to the president of Ghana in his tweet yesterday on social media. And I quote, he says, I'm trying to find that tweet actually, that Ghana, if you talk down on your economy and your currency would continue to go down. And one of the things that he also talked about, Akufo-Addo, is the fact that he's never seen a time in history where Ghana has actually ever had to go through such devastating economic challenges. And so the reality of the challenge that we face today extends beyond the shores of Nigeria, extends to the coast of Ghana, to the lovely streets of London, which has experienced the change of 2 prime ministers over the last 2 months, onto the city of France. And so, yes, we recognize that there are challenges of employment, there are challenges of economic, let me not use the word bastardization, but those challenges are not peculiar to Nigeria at this season. It's an experience that is global. But how do we respond to that back home? Is the fact that the APC-led government, in particular the incoming administration, God willing, of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has set out in his Hope Restoration Manifesto strategies and roadmap to help Nigeria weather the storm, to help to create a system that will provide more jobs, both public and private sector jobs, that would help to ensure the digitization of opportunities, and also ensure that we leverage the digital economy and build on, for example, what the current administration had done in such areas. So, for example, we had created the Ministry of Digital Economy, but to now ensure that the ministry goes deeper in achieving its results and helping young people to really leverage on economic opportunities on the global space, and also look at ways to ensure that we finance entrepreneurship and support young people with ideas, building on the startup bill that has been signed into law by His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari. And so we have set a roadmap of intervention that we will put in place to single out Nigeria in particular and help us leverage on the resources, in particular human resource that we have, to take us out of this quagmire that we find ourselves and the economic challenges that has spread across all over, in particular since the issues of the pandemic.
Right. So I can imagine, Dio. We'll need you not to move too close to the camera so we can have a great
okay.
medium shot. Brilliant. I
View,
think
yeah.
Works perfect for us like this now. So good. So I'm thinking, when you look at Nigeria's structure, we have the national and then we have the states. And everyone doesn't live in Abuja, by the way. So we know that a lot of what will happen in the next 4 years for your candidate and for any other candidate that wins the election, we would have to look at how the federal works with the states to get those unemployment numbers down as quickly as possible, say sooner rather than later. What would you say will be the most important, or the most important component of your manifesto affecting youth and employment opportunities that you say, if it's plugged in and played today, will make a significant difference in those numbers?
I think one of it is also the issues of tackling insecurity, solving the security challenge of the country, at the same time creating employment opportunities. And so what my candidate has looked at is, how do we solve economic problem, how do we solve societal problem, at the same time create opportunities for employment and growth. So there are two arms to it. There's the public sector intervention, there's the private sector intervention. So let's look at the public sector intervention. We have issues of banditry in some places across the country. The ratio of a police officer to citizen that are being protected needs to increase. So for example, my candidate is assured that by the grace of the Almighty, when he becomes president, it will ensure that there's increased recruitment in the police and security system. So an average of, for example, 50,000 recruitment into the police force. So ensure that we can police Nigeria effectively, increase security to allow foreign investors to also find Nigeria attractive, to allow Nigerians feel safe in their own country. But while solving that challenge of insecurity in our country, we're also going to bring in professional, educated, exposed and enlightened young Nigerians into the police force and the police system. And what that does is that you have a new crop of recruits that enters into the system, that also goes into that system with a different mindset, with a different perspective and with a different opinion. And when they get in there, the professionalism that they would display as a member of the police service system will be different from what is being experienced today, because of the with all due respect to the crop of officers in the service right now, there will be a strong injection of new blood and new young people with new experience, with very few experience of the military years and the militarization days, but stronger experience of democratic systems and processes. So you understand that the experiences that people have who were born in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the Nigeria that they experienced under Babangida, under Abacha, is different from the experience since 1999. So the level of their exposure, the understanding of human rights and respect for the rule of law is different from those who were born before 1999, in particular in the military years. So recruiting those kind of young people who understand the new age, who are on social media, who are also exposed to international practices and norms, will not just create jobs in the system, but will bring in a new crop of police who will respect the rule of law, a new crop of soldiers.
All right. Sorry to interrupt you. Great.
So we will create public sector jobs. That's number one. Number two is that we're going to create an enabling environment, an economy that is safe, that is, attractive to foreign investors who can come into our nation and also create jobs, build industries and manufacturing.
Sorry to interrupt you.
For example, if you go to Jigawa.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dio. All right, so we'll take it one after the other. I'm going to come to building an environment that is attractive to local and foreign investors after this first point you made about security. And for the second time this morning, I hear the terms systems, analysis, and processes, which interestingly was, propounded, I remember back in the days in school, Patrick Geddes, on how we can build a formidable system. And the discussion we had then, earlier on the show, was around healthcare and the system. So obviously, it applies to what you're trying to do with the police. Tell me, what is wrong and what is that abominable sin that this Nigeria police has committed, that it's unable to solve the physical security problems we're dealing with, to the point where you have now in this country, in at least 33 or nearly all the states of the country, including the FCT, soldiers carrying out quasi-military stroke police operations, not short-term, long-term, 4, 5, 8 years, 10 years in place, that you think that just the police can now provide that security? Do you recommend that the soldiers are taken out of the way and you're going to have just police carrying out civilian security operations in the country?
So as I spoke to you earlier, as I mentioned earlier, you also have to understand perspective issues and orientation issues. There's something I say a lot, and one of my friends, Siwaris, was the one that propounded this. Your life experience determines your belief system. Your belief system determines your action, and your action determines your destiny. In other words, your life experience, what you've gone through in life, determines how you behave, how you relate. And that's why I referred us back to the military days, for example, under Abacha and under Babangida and all of that. So if you have grown up in the Civil War years, if you've grown up under Abacha and you've seen those challenges and you were in the force, there were practice in the force that are different from the practice of modern day democracy. There were practice in the military system. So for example, you stay in the airport and you want to have a photo, and somebody comes to you and says you can't take a photo here, and you could be in London Heathrow or Washington Dulles Airport and take a photo, because in the military days you were not allowed to take pictures in those environments. These were cultures and practices that were of that kind of environment. So there were things that were little flimsy things, but they were part of the things at that time because of the military experiences that our people had gone through. So what I'm saying in essence is, there's nothing physically wrong with our officers of the force, but the experiences that have decided their belief system have been things that they had gone through. So the mindset is the same thing in family, for example. When our parents were growing up, they say when an adult is talking, you don't speak back, you don't express your opinion. Children are meant to be seen and not heard. But in the world of today, your 2-year-old son will say, "Mommy, why are you doing that? Daddy, stop that." Because the experiences that they have, the kind of cultural orientation that they have is different. So when you have a new injection of mindset and perspective into the force, for example, the output and the performance that you would expect from there, you would be totally different. So for example, a young person, for example, who's well exposed, who uses the social media very well, who understands the impact of technology, would not be in uniform and stop you on the road and say because you're carrying a laptop, you're a Yahoo boy. Because there is that understanding and exposure that comes from that. Some of these things are cultural orientation, in terms of how people have seen life or the perspective. I was saying to someone recently that if you see something for too long, it becomes a culture for you and a way of life, and that is the only thing that you understand to be, how things should be. And so that's one aspect. But bringing in new blood, new orientation, new perspective into the space, it also helps the force and the military service to, refresh and to reinvigorate and to also have a new dimension. And the second point I was trying to raise earlier, is the fact that we need to be able to create an enabling environment. And one of the reasons we need to do that is to actually have a system in place that people are safe to be. First, in terms of security. Second, in terms of a way of life. In a community and a society that people appreciate opportunities. And that's one of the reasons that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu wants to focus a lot on the economy and driving growth, but also creating an environment that people feel safe, not just as a person, but also to put their money and their resource. And so, part of it is going to be creating ideas, also being someone I'll probably consider him as the only ever person, God willing, to be president since 1999 that has an economic background, that is a professional, that is also a technocrat that went into politics. Former President Obasanjo was a military man. President Yar'Adua was more of a not more of a private sector person. Same with President Jonathan, who was also yes, you call him someone who has been in the political system for years, and of course President Muhammadu Buhari, a fantastic military leader who has also brought in some dynamism from his experience. But if you look at Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, he's worked in the private sector, he's worked in the business sector, so he understands the economy, he understands how business works, he understands, he's worked with the big four both in the US and in Nigeria, he's lived in the diaspora, he has international exposure, he has international business experiences, he is someone that is business friendly, and that's why you see Lagos become a business friendly society. That's why Dangote has brought his refinery and many of his businesses here. That's why many people across the country are thriving, with a business in Lagos and Southwest Nigeria.
All right, Dayo.
So that is
excellent. I am sure a lot of these credentials he'll require to get Nigeria out of the lodge it is in. But it's a question a lot of people are going to be asking you as well as your candidate, which we believe is riding on the crest of the incumbent administration, which, by the way, has been there for 8 years. And under its watch, a lot of things have really gone wrong. The latest Human Development Index report from the UNDP, which interestingly aggregates reports from Nigeria's NBS, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, and all of the government subsidiaries, puts Nigeria's life expectancy at 52.7 years. It's the worst, only better than Chad in 191 countries. Measures things like the condition of living, standard of living. This president talks about taking 100 million people from poverty in 10 years, which would have put at 10 million number of years. Unfortunately, you have more people going into poverty every year than 10 million going into poverty every year as we speak. So your candidate, if he wins the election, has a Herculean task. So tell me in numbers, because that's always been a problem. The numbers of people you expect to see getting out of poverty in the first year of office, the numbers of people you expect to get jobs in the first year of office, so we can do a compare and contrast and see if you're growing more than you're diminishing. Dayo.
Thank you so much. See, let's be realistic. There's nobody that takes over the government of Nigeria, no matter who you are, who's not going to have challenge. And that's what we've seen in Europe as well in recent times. That's what we've seen in England. Everybody shouted that Gordon Brown was the worst president you've ever seen. Sorry, Boris Johnson, and it was out, and then we had Liz Truss, and in less than 50 days, the British people want Liz Truss out, and now there's someone else out there, because the global system is facing unprecedented challenge right now as never.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dayo. Yeah, we get your point. You made that point earlier on, and we understand. And you said, just to coin you, you said that we're facing similar challenges globally, but you said what is important is the response of the local authority being faced with the problem. So locally now, how do you deal with this problem? What do you think you can do in terms of numbers? Because numbers are very, very important. What do we need? What are you going to say in the first year? Poverty numbers out, people employed in. What sort of numbers are you looking at?
So I wouldn't be able to give you specific numbers now, because, for example, part of what we're looking at and what we're looking into right now are identifying low-hanging fruit. What are we doing in the first 6 months? And then what are we doing medium time, 6 months to 1 year? And what are we doing over a 4-year period? And what system are we putting in place to go beyond the next 4 years to continue to ensure that Nigeria is back on track? So, for example, a priority is infrastructure. We need to continue to create infrastructure, not just at the subnational level, but across the country as well. How do we ensure, for example, that infrastructure to help businesses grow in terms of power generation, is, provided. So one of the major factors in our manifesto that you've seen my candidate do in Lagos when he was governor, and the Lagos state system after he has left as governor under his mentorship, is the IPP project. So it's going to do a lot it's going to invest a lot to ensure that not just the national but also subnational can generate power and provide infrastructure to be able to spread that across the country. Beyond that are going to be, of course, road, rail, and transport infrastructure, building on what President Muhammadu Buhari has done. We have the rail system, for example, with Warri. We have Abuja, Kaduna. We have, a lot of other rail system across Lagos. One of our subnational, for example, is building an internal trade and rail system. We're going to have a lot of more states that are being encouraged and supported from the national level that are opening up that transportation system, in particular internal rail system across the country. So there'll be more investment in infrastructure. There'll be more investment in security. There's also going to be more effort to ensure that we can create not just public sector jobs, but also private sector jobs by attracting businesses who feel their investment is safe in Nigeria. I was recently in Jigawa State, and I visited a lot of companies and businesses. For example, there's a Chinese company in Jigawa that is producing granites and marbles and tiles, on the soil of Nigeria and Jigawa State that have international quality standard, production. We want to bring in those kind of companies to come in, and that one company alone is employing directly over 250 staff in Jigawa State under Governor Badaru. If you go across the country, you see similar across different states. But what my candidate is going to do, actually, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is to expand the capacities of the subnational to also be able to attract more businesses, create an environment that people have the investment safe, where people can come into Nigeria and do businesses. And I say that he has the capacity, having come from the private sector. He knows how to pull the right kind of resources, both human resources, network, into practice to achieve those dreams. And so while I may not say to you, yes, we will get unemployment down by so and so percent, we will get this down by so and so percent, we know that we will put in the work to ensure that we can create more jobs both in the public sector and attract private sector investment that will create jobs both in manufacturing, in agriculture, exports, and other areas.
As we try, how I wish you could go on and on, but how time flies when you're having a great discussion. But there's something people would also like to know, because it will help us measure in terms of skill what the problems are. I'm sure if you look at the country's dashboard, you can see where all the problems are majorly. You can see in one particular year, some states got not one single dollar of investment into their state. So whatever magic dust your candidate hopes to sprinkle on the economy is badly needed, and it better happen sooner rather than later. What would you say in terms of how your candidate understands the specific problems in areas where things have simply not happened, and what to do about them if elected into office?
So one of the hallmarks of leadership is not the fact that you know it all or you can solve all the problems, but you can fill a room with people who have bright ideas, who knows how to solve those problems, and put them on the table and say, let's fix this. What the leader really needs is the political will and the courage and the seriousness to ensure that people respect him and knows that his body language says, I'm serious about fixing this and I'm going to get it done. And that's one thing you will see from Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He's not a man with all the answers, but he's a man who can bring to the table people with all the answers and work together with them. So he understands the issues and the peculiarity. He's a well-traveled person. He's well exposed both locally and internationally. He understands the economy. He's very diverse in his views, and he's open in his perspective about things globally. But it's not just about him, but the kind of people he has the capacity to bring together. You've seen what he's done in Lagos. Leadership for excellence. He's brought in people. He brought in Oshibajo, he brought in Fashola, he brought in Agbesha. You can see all of them doing their best across the country, even globally across the nation. No one has ever brought in that kind of leadership, in particular in the sub-Saharan continent, that has helped to also, produce people who are helping in the private sector, who are making their mark across. And so it's going to come into the government, put those teams together, and provide that leadership head on to say, we're focused about this. we have a timeline, and this is what we're going to. And look at what he has done. He created a master plan in Lagos. This is the Lagos we want to see in 2030.
Right.
Is concise about the kind of leadership that Lagos needs for that, and he put his support behind those kind of leadership.
Right.
And you've seen that from Fashola to Sanwo-Olu, the kind of result that Lagos has achieved, and that's what we hope that would be seen across, to say, you know what, we need to find quality people who are going to achieve this thing and work hand in hand with the presidential candidate Asiwaju Bola Ahmed.
All right, thank you very much, Dayo Israel, who's the National Youth Leader for the All Progressives Congress. We hope when we get you next time, you probably will have for us the numbers of people you hope to see impacted, maybe in the first quarter or the first year. We'll also hope to know the scope of what you intend to see. And finally, we hope to know where the money is going to be coming from and how the money is going to be allocated in terms of where the urgent needs are required in. But thank you very much, Dayo Israel.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me, my good pleasure. Thank you so much, Miss Ob.
Excellent.